Good evening, and thank you for joining Clark Center NYC again for our newest series, Focus On 2022. I am Sheila Rohan, founding member of Clark Center NYC, a member of the Dance Theater of Harlem's original company, as well as a founding member of the 152nd Street Black Ballet Legacy. Many thanks to the Clark Center NYC's board, the Lower Manhattan Community Corporation, and our generous friends for all their support. When Clark Center began at the West Side branch of the YWCA in 1959, it offered a wide array of classes, not only in dance, but in music, theater, and theater crafts, such as lighting design, costumes, scenery, and stage production. Our current series brings us full circle in celebrating the diversity of artists who developed at Clark Center then, and the emerging artists we would like to recognize today. We are focusing on one arts professional each month who has had the opportunity to talk about their work, their lives, and their vision. We hope you'll be inspired as they tell their stories. It is our honor this evening to introduce our featured artist, Devynity Wray.
Greetings all, salutations. I want to thank you, Clark Center and Jill Williams. Thank you so much for this invitation. I'm very excited to be here this evening in consideration of my work and process and practice. So I will start at the beginning. I'm an only child from South Jamaica, Queens, New York, and my Black American heritage has always been at the center of my creative practice and exploits. If you could start with my slides. Will I be able to see them? Okay, great. So I wrote my first poem when I was 5 and was always, playing in crayons and markers. It was my childhood dream to own a Staples. So it was no surprise to anyone in my family that upon discovering that there were schools you could apply to for art, that I would do just that. I was accepted into LaGuardia High School as an art major, where I would say my creative trajectory officially began. True to form, LaGuardia High School, otherwise known as the Fame School, was everything it's depicted as on television and in the movies. Every day was a musical. People were, dancing on the tabletops in the cafeteria. It was quite an event to behold every day for 4 years. And as an art major, I soon discovered that it meant that I would be left out a lot. Because I found out very early that art majors were the corny major. No one that was an art major that didn't want to be seen wanted to be an art major. And I was one of those people. There were no performances in the art discipline. And when we did have shows, only faculty and, the parents that really loved you would show up. So I never wanted to be an art major as soon as I knew how boring it was. I actually pretended to be a vocal major. I would sneak into other classes. I befriended a lot of vocal and instrumental majors and dance majors. Basically, any major that was an art major, I was trying to be around them. And I kind of abandoned art at that point and checked out. And what I also discovered was that I had a profound love for writing and for spoken word, which led me to performance poetry and slam poetry, which ultimately led me to the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. So I'd be in school during the day, painting and drawing and then doing all of the academic work. And then late nights, I would be devoted to being on stage and performing and slamming and winning. I won a lot at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. I was actually a Grand Slam finalist in 2002, and I made it onto the Nuyorican Poets Slam team, and we went to nationals that year, and we placed third in the country. And so I performed all over New York's spoken word scene and New Jersey as well for quite some time. And yeah, I would perform and write, and it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized that my passions and inquisitiveness with regard to visual art were something that I still wanted to explore. I had felt at an earlier age that you had to commit to one thing or the other. And a few years ago, I was like, that's not the way that it needs to be. So I started just like getting back into painting and trying to figure out how I could really delve into this next iteration of myself and my creative being in this way. So I started painting again. I painted and made drawings, still feeling frustrated that it wasn't enough. So this piece that you see right here is one of the first pieces that I started working on, getting back into the visual art practice. And you will see throughout my work that the common thread is always my Blackness and my heritage, and thinking about what it means to be a Black woman from a critical standpoint artistically. Painting wasn't enough. Still, I still wanted more. So in addition to, working on oil and canvas, as you see here, I started getting really excited about collage. Making collages is something that I find to be incredibly gratifying, because it's like every piece is a puzzle and I have to figure out where the pieces are. So when I'm able to actually accomplish that in my mind, to execute that in a visual way that others can experience along with me, I feel like I've really done my job. I was accepted into a writing residency a few years ago where I was encouraged to go back to school. And it was in working towards my visual arts MFA program that I decided that I wanted to devote my creative practice to really learning what I could contribute to the contemporary art conversation. The next slide, you should see two pieces. So the one to the left is called Three Saints. So Three Saints is kind of a conversation that I'm having with a spiritual component of myself. I grew up Catholic. Well, I went to Catholic school. So I was sort of raised Catholic, but then I was also raised in the Methodist church. And my uncle was a Pentecostal deacon. So I have like this incredible mesh of spiritual experiences going back into Christianity. And something that you notice in the Catholic Church is there's so many visuals. There's sculptures and there's stained glass, and there are all of these beautiful iconographic images that kind of bring forth the deities. Whereas in Black church, it's more, sonic and rhythm and beat. So in making Three Saints, I was thinking a lot about how to visualize some of that that Black church experience that you don't often see in Black church. And then also thinking about the Black American history involved with trees, the traumas associated with that, as well as the joys that are associated with the grounding of trees. And trees have a long lasting life. And these are like three just great figures that kind of depict that in a scene. And then to the right, we have Thicken the Thighs, which is kind of an homage to just Black womanhood and the splendor of our bodies, and the ornament. I'm very into adornment in the spirit of artists like Chris O'Feely or Arthur Jaffa, Kehinde Wiley, and even contemporaries today like Tawny Chapman. So the next slide that you will see, this is also speaking back to my upbringing in church, in Catholic church. For one of the sacraments is called confirmation, and you have to pick a patron saint. And I majored in Africana Studies at Hunter College. My BA is in that field, and so the historicity of Black America is something that's always in the forefront of my mind when making work. And I consider Madam C.J. Walker and Ida B. Wells Barnett to be part of that lineage of my heritage. So I felt it really important to create a kind of series that honors women in that charge, Black women in that charge historically. Something that I always consider in this series that I'm working on. So these are two examples of that. And then also in collaging their bodies, I deconstructed like jewels and different kind of ornaments, digging back into that ornamentation and adornment of Blackness. From a visual perspective, from magazines. American publications have historically kind of alleviated the Black image from its pages. So kind of taking that and using that as the pieces with which to create these new works is kind of like a revival in honoring these women. The next slide that you will see, the piece on the left is one of the pieces that I worked on towards my MFA, and this is called The High Joker. It's a mixed media collage, my favorite thing. And to the right, you'll see this is one of the references that I use. Collages I look at, like Lorna Simpson, Romare Bearden, of course, and Hannah Huch that you will see to the right. She was a Dadaist in the early 20th century, thinking about ways to express criticality and political concepts within my work. So the High Joker speaks on a few planes in the game of spades, which is popular in the Black community. The High Joker, if you're playing with top five, for those that know the rules of spades, is the highest card. Like once you put that card down, you've won the game. Well, you've won that book. And just thinking about the performative nature of Blackness in America and what Blackness means within the Black community, intraracially, and then outside of the community, how one can be considered a Black person in one realm and not behaviorally in another. So I kind of, jumbled a bunch of figures and put that as the background within context of that work. The next piece that you will see is Have It Your Way. So in my MFA during my studies, I was introduced to an incredible artist by the name of Steve Locke. And a lot of his work delves, well, this series in particular, his Killer series, delves into just, instead of looking at Black trauma from a Black lens, it kind of approaches whiteness and the evils associated with said whiteness. So his killer series is basically like Dylan Roof and different attackers and violence who have committed violent acts against Black people in America. And I kind of took that story and made my own interpretation, thinking about the story specifically of Dylan Roof and how he was taken to Burger King after he was arrested for killing and just really trying to visualize Black consumption and what that means in America with this work. The next piece that you will see is, okay, so I went to, while all of this creative thought and consideration and this revival that I was having was going on, I went on a trip to Africa, which I consider to be sort of a pilgrimage in a great many ways because of all that I experienced on my trip while I was there. And I'm still pulling from that trip to this day in a lot of the work that I make. So that slide to the left, you'll see there's it's called Adinkra Dreams. In the country of Ghana, they use Adinkra symbols, and Adinkra symbols are all over. Like they're on the government buildings, and they're like different sayings and proverbs in them. So I used this kind of this canvas to articulate some of those, and it's kind of like a treasure hunt. Like, can you find the symbols, and how many can you identify? And the piece to the right is kind of like a snapshot of my mind of things that I encountered, Ghanaian boys playing on the beach in Ghana. The next piece that you will see is also from my trip in Africa. While being there, as Black a country it is, Ghana has a lot of churches, and there are many, 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 many Christian churches, and lots and lots and lots and lots of white Jesus. So I was pretty stunned actually by how prolific white Jesus is in such a Black country, and it made me create this work that you see here, with the white Jesus on top and the Ghanaian man beneath him. The next slide that you will see, so this next conversation is kind of being in Africa, being in Ghana showed me that I am a Black woman, but I'm an American woman. And being Black in America is something that that all Black people grapple with because of the complexities of our relationship with this nation. So, but like getting back to America after such a profound trip on another continent in another country just made me realize how American I am and how it is okay to be American, despite the treatment, because I'm still from here, and my people still built here. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. So I started thinking about patriotism and Black patriotism and what that looks like from my perspective. So I really got into Jasper John's. He has like many flag series. And my next slide, you will see my first attempt at kind of an interpretation of what my version of a Black flag would be, thinking about the colors of the flag of Black liberation, red, black, and green. So this was kind of my first stab at that. And then my next slide, I show that I discovered David Hammons, who I'd seen this flag all throughout life and childhood, but I didn't know that he was the creator of the African-American flag. So once I got into that, I was like, oh, this is so juicy. This is amazing. Like, I have to, like really delve into this. And so I dug into a lot of his work because it speaks to, everything that I'm trying to kind of parse through as a Black American woman. The next piece I believe you will see is Devious Patriot. And I really love this piece. It makes me smile with my heart because I feel like this girl is an interpretation of the future. She's up to something, and she's ready and she's prepared, and it's gonna be a good time for her and her future. And she's kind of, just like an icon in my mind for Black folk in America, with a jumbled up flag with a puzzle behind her. And the next slide that you will see are just kind of more research within the framework of David Hammons, that I was thinking about how can I actually like really dig into patriotism and what the flag means in its traumas and in its joys for from myself. And the next slide that you will see, kind of like, right, January 6th. So when January 6th happened, I was kind of, like the rest of us, just awestruck at the level of patriotism that was displayed that day. It's something that I'll never forget, and kind of just like reawakened me to how emboldened a group of people can be when their beliefs are that strong. Yeah, so that made me like really, really consider what my patriotism means to me, and how I can properly articulate said patriotism and pride in a way that is gratifying to me and beneficial. Next slide. So I started making different kinds of flags. This flag is, in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see an Adinkra symbol, and this is the symbol of Sankofa, which means the return. So this had to do with, me going back to Africa and returning to the homeland, and then bringing back, all that I've learned and experienced from that trip. And then beneath that, to the right, are the symbols of spades, which can be deemed a pejorative term towards Black people, but also is one of the greatest games of spades that are popular in the African American community. And then all of these next three that you will see, they're works on wood, because again, wood and trees, I just find that grounding is so important, and that's kind of the way that I articulate those things in my work with these flags. This piece, so I used, for the stripes, I used pieces of Bible paper, specifically from the book of Exodus, because in antebellum slavery, they would have what they were called, Black Bibles or slavery Bibles, where they would take out the book of Exodus for fear that the slaves that could read would get a hold of Exodus and read about the story of Moses and, be inspired to try to revolt or leave. So the stripes from there are specifically from the pages of Exodus. And then I use cowrie shells, which are considered currency all throughout ancient Africa, and sunflower seeds, which is a treasured snack in the Black American community for the stars. And the next piece, so this is also on wood, and the stripes are adorned in glitter. And then I have the 3 M's at the bottom, which represent Malcolm, Medgar, and Martin Luther King Jr., of course. Next slide. Okay, so all while this was happening in 2021, 2020, I charged myself also because I didn't want my writing, the writing part of my practice, to die while I'm, trying to figure out what this visual artist within me is doing. So I charged myself with writing a micropoem every day and posting it to my Instagram page. And I did that every day for at least 365 days. So the one to the left is, I'll read to you, allergic to racism. I break out in blackness every time. And to the right, everything is secretly a fight. Once you realize that, you can brace your body for the blow. Get in your stance, strike. And my final slide in the presentation.
So many rips in this fabric, madness, it's torn here. Ain't nothing new, just residue imbued with traumas and what's worn here. Shaken in this nakedness, yes, we adorn fear. Hurts being homesick when you're homesick, foes telling you don't belong here. When my parents and their parents' parents were born here, then they'll tell me that there's nothing wrong here. My country, 'tis of thee it seems, we need another song here.
And so working in these new virtual spaces that we have on Zoom and on social media, it's been important to me to try to figure out how to exhibit myself in that way on these planes and in these spaces without compromising myself and in a way that is still comfortable for me. So I've been just working on trying to mesh the visual art practice with the written practice to try to create something enjoyable. And so that concludes my slides. I'm going to recite a couple of pieces with the time remaining. And this piece that I'm going to do is called Sprite. An anomaly, and one without apology. I come from those on the short stick of the monopoly, last left to find and discover what the world's been known about and then concealed, leaving me to sift through these diluted truths and doled out to me as the character of ill repute. I'm the only one still baffled by how I am treated, for the tusks of elephants and Harambe seem to see more justice than my kind ever will, the seldom compensated. Consistently silenced, yet constantly the topic of conversation, always at a loss, that's stolen property. Kings and queens stolen as property, treated as commodity for profit and made possession. Ever present is my oppression, and my humanity is always up for debate. I said, my humanity is always up for debate. No matter how I walk on the narrow, no matter how tall or how straight, I am the criminal, the most debased. And they'll say things to me like, well, there's always been slaves. And it takes a great deal of bravery, and every reaction composed of a whole only known is my fraction. Composure key to my survival, because my every reaction determines my fate in these incendiary times. You're going to have to pardon me. You see, I predate the data suite, the database. I go unmentioned like the Sudanese pyramids. I'm comprised of Negro spirituals, Kwanzaa celebrations, and street talk. Nina Simone lyrics, Quincy Jones rhythms, and sweet stalks of corn on the cob, buttered down paprika, pepper, and diva in my feature. And I just want to give a word of homage to the congregation for what it's worth. I grew up in the church, Methodist turned Pentecostal that went to Catholic school. That means a whole hot mess and more white Jesus than a little bit. For mine, it was forbidden to be literate for centuries. Like how would we have texted without any concept of the letters, the parentheses? I precede the refreshing of feeds, yes, the type to set a precedent, a different element of a previous time, prism in the light, schism on the line may come off as unfamiliar. Long road ahead in my progression. She's a caterpillar, but she's iller. Descendant of those that stood upon holy ground, profound, although been captured, held, suspended, and told I was otherwise, dissected, splendid. Even in that state of suspension, not the Hottentot, but the hothead, they shot hot lead and decapitated. Whole cities, entire towns eviscerated, and my knees still raw from all of this bending down. Gathering all of these pieces of me up off the ground. Cursed to this concrete. Asphalt, been spit upon, barked at, and told my oppression was my fault. Fighting for freedom, but never having it. I've been fighting for freedom, never having it. Fighting for free breakfast and clean water, a decent life without the slaughter, denied my own prosperity, yet here I am to memorialize my legacy. I'm Betty Shabazz with a blazer on and a bang out. Queen Latifah in the role of Cleo, finna bang out. Sojourner in my truth, ain't I a woman? We got the same mouth. I'm Harriet, rifle close to my side, ready to aim out. Mahalia when she sang out, Tony jotting down notes for Tar Baby. There were all kinds of jigaboos and porch monkeys and tar babies. When I was a baby, there were bones in the noses and cartoons that I would come to memorize. I know more hottie hoes than one should know. And that was all before my oatmeal. At once the product and the pest to be fumigated. At once the most often copied and the most humiliated, overdone and understated. I got a glow feel. And it's so real that they come in mobs to extinguish it, utterly flummoxed, perplexed by the fact that they can't relinquish it, all while consuming my Ill Street blues, my go tell it on the mountain, my purple rain. In my most natural state, I soar and I reign, pushed to the periphery, but I remain the main. You're going to have to pardon me, you see. When I started out, the discs were actually floppy, not just icons for save. I'm from before the stream. I've seen the pound sign from whence the hashtag came. We play tic-tac-toe in that particular frame. With the receiver to my ear, I talk until the dial tone came. I'm showing my age. Just proof that my bottom and your bottom, they not the same. For my life, they'll place on me significant blame, furiously fighting, only furthering to ignite my flame. For it is when I'm at my darkest that I'm my most brilliant light. I said it's when I'm at my darkest that I'm my most brilliant light. So fearful of my fury that they'll shoot me on sight. Black this magic I inhabit, burning bright. Thank you. It's so weird to perform poetry and not have like applause.
Yes. Well, you have my applause. Well, Divinity, that was so wonderful. The insight into your work and your spoken word is divine, so profound. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
You know, I see the painting behind you.
Yes, she's in
mention of that. Yeah.
So one of my new pieces, the new series that I'm thinking about is a lot of the time as an artist, I'm always thinking about the canvas as a space and as a plane, and you know, canvas is always white. So I'm always thinking about how can I cover up all of this white, right?
Yeah.
So this new series that I'm working on, I'm using black canvas, which I'm really excited about. So all of this piece behind me, she's not finished yet, but she's black canvas. So I'm adding color to this black space and like really exploring how to master that, how to master the black as opposed to covering up the white.
We have a couple of questions in the Q&A.
Sounds good.
Yeah. One of them is, how does your work and writing overlap and influence each other?
That is a great question. So that's something that that I'm always grappling with in my process, because there's some things that I feel like I can't put words to. And so those are the things that end up on a more visual plane for me. And then there are some things that I feel like a poem is kind of like the footnote to the piece. So I would say that they overlap in that way. And a lot of the work that I'm making now is kind of like even with like using the Bible paper, they're like, that's text. So I'm thinking about text as material, and not just like this sonic element or this this thing that I'm saying.
Yes. Another question. Are you a digital artist as well?
I wouldn't say so. I'm really old school in that way. I've tried to make work specifically for digital spaces, and I don't feel like it lands well. It may be something that I'll explore more in the future. But I'm more of like, I like, going to the museum and being in the space and being in front of the work. I'm really corny in that way. Like I like zoom into the piece and I'm like, what did they use? Oh my gosh. I'm really like fascinated by materials, and I feel like the digital space doesn't really lend space to kind of like the multi-dimensionalities of, using different materials and seeing like brushstrokes and things like that.
All right. Well, thank you. I can't thank you enough. This was really a pleasure. And we feel informed about your work. And we wish you all the best as you grow and as you continue to be one of our great artists.
Thank you so much. It is truly an honor.
Okay, thank you. Clark Center, NYC, thanks you for participating in this Focus On series. We will be in hiatus for the rest of the summer. We won't be back until sometime in September, but the Facebook page will be up and you can still be informed there on the events around town and what's happening with our fellow artists. Our website is being upgraded and recharged, but you can, I'm sorry, you can reach us at clarkcenternyc.org. So thank you again. We really appreciate your participation and keeping the Clark Center NYC moving forward.
Thanks so much again for having me. I appreciate being a part of the conversation.
Thank you.